Welcome back. It's time to look at an enterprise that has minimal negative impact on global or local economy. We're talking about business sustainability and the Nigerian capital market. We have in the studios this morning the head corporate financial advisory business of Meristem Securities Limited, Adejumoke Awolumate. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
And of course, we also have the corporate finance analyst, Olayinka Oyetunji. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Business sustainability and the Nigerian capital market. What makes?
Okay. First, we can start by saying, defining what business sustainability is. We can say a sustainable business is a green business. It's a business that is able to meet the needs of its current stakeholders without jeopardizing the future of the stakeholders. Now, what we mean by sustainable business is a business that is able to use a managed and disciplined process to manage profits, manage people, and manage the planet.
Okay, so you are able to mix all of this and make sure that the business continues.
Exactly.
Now, how do we mix it with the capital markets?
Now, the capital markets gives businesses platforms to raise funds. If a business is sustainable, it's easier for you to attract the funding that you need to make your working capital and then to expand the business.
All right. So how relevant is this in today's environment or today's economy?
Oh, well, talking about relevance, I recollect reading through a research report where I think this was about 1990, where certain businesses were exposed to certain metrics and measured over time. And what was discovered was those businesses that had their focus not just on profit, but on the entire holistic approach to managing businesses, had better returns, they had better profitability, they had grown, and they had survived the environment. So when you're looking at sustainability and today's environment, you find out that you need to have your eyes and your tab on all those metrics besides or in addition to financial metrics to ensure that you're able to weather the storm and grow to be what you really should be as a business.
How can SMEs in Nigeria grow to their full potential? We've just finished talking to BOI.
Yeah.
We've just been talking about small businesses, little funds to NYSC members, so that they will not become job seekers, but they will become entrepreneurs. So businesses such as those, how do you advise them to achieve and expand to their potential?
Okay, first and foremost, when a business starts, I was watching the BOI interview. The first thing is develop a very robust plan, which means that an entrepreneur has to have a viable business plan before they engage in that business. For an SME in Nigeria, usually you find out that it's a mix between informality and individuality. But at some point, if you want to really grow as a business, you have to go through that process of formalization. We all know that every business goes through different life cycles. There's the startup process where you're conceptualizing your business, where you definitely then begin to put certain plans in place to be able to run your business. But at some point, the business kicks off and then you begin to go through the growth process. If in going through these phases, a business does not begin to formalize itself and separate itself from the individual that initially conceptualized it, there will be a cap on the growth process, and you may not find such businesses going into their full potential.
Okay, now in talking about business sustainability or sustainable business, which you say is a green business and an enterprise that has a minimal negative impact, how do you, minimal negative impact, meaning you don't have, okay, this kind of business I'm going into is not the one that's the impact, or it's too huge, for instance, if you're going to have negatives?
Yes. Now, when we talk about sustainable business, like we said, and like what Jumoke said, people usually say it involves managing the triple bottom line. You don't just focus on profit. You focus on everything, the holistic system. You focus on the profit. You focus on the people are the stakeholders, and you focus on the planet. It's not just producing products that are not safe for human consumption. It's not going into businesses that constitute to pollution in terms of air pollution or noise pollution. So that's what we mean when we say the business is sustainable. And like the question is asked about sustainability, SME growth, meeting their potentials. It's important that entrepreneurs are financially educated. They need financial advisors because there are some qualities and skills that are required of entrepreneurs that usually in our society we find that is lacking.
What are those qualities that you think are lacking?
Like Jumoke mentioned, and like in the BOI interview, simple bookkeeping skills is important. Separation of the person from the company, because the company is an entity, is very important. But most entrepreneurs don't know. They just mix up everything and think, oh, my sales is my profit. Meanwhile, your revenue is different from your profit.
So you need to separate them and know which is which.
And yes.
So how does one achieve that? Because in many small businesses, the man is the business is the man.
Well, just like everything starts in a seed form, I believe that at that point of conceptualization, you can hardly separate. But if you must take the business beyond yourself, at some point, you have to start putting building blocks in place. In achieving such things, usually when you start with your idea, you need someone, maybe an angel investor or a BOI that sets up a fund for you to access the required funding for you to be able to do this. Once you've done that, you've been able to identify the market you want to operate in, you've been able to put certain structures and processes in place. What we have found at Meristem, and which generally is the idea with anyone that wants to work with this category of businesses, being able to afford the resources to be able to make the entire infrastructure be on ground to run with it is usually challenging. So you have to take it as you go along. But what you could also do is work with a class of professionals that we call business incubators. These are people or professionals that want to focus on this avenue, just like Ndidi mentioned, where you sort of bring these sophisticated skills down to the level of someone who's up and coming. So it's a way of ensuring the sustainability. So for instance, Ndidi's input as a consultant to ensure that small businesses, the informal market as it were, has access to the right skills. And there are companies that do such things. Even the Nigerian Stock Exchange has begun to realize that everything cannot be about the mega businesses. So there are platforms that are being created for such businesses to then access some of this skills and inputs into their business to then enable them grow. And as they grow, they can then disaggregate and begin to say, okay, you know what, I have a retained lawyer, I have a retained financial advisor, I've got this and that to be able to complement the team.
After all, Guinness was started by a Guinness, and
Precisely.
Unilever was started by a liver.
Correctly.
But they're still alive today, and those founders have been long dead, and gone.
All right.
So this is the kind of thing that you're advocating.
Yes.
The business continues, even
And
though
our
the
beliefs,
founder
yes.
has died.
Yes.
Now let's bring in the stock markets. What role is the Nigerian stock exchange going to play, in all of this?
Okay. For SMEs in particular, the Nigerian Stock Exchange affords them the opportunity to make their brand known. It gives them that edge on brand equity. Another thing is it affords them the opportunity to list their shares. And then the listing requirements of the Nigerian Stock Exchange makes it like imperative for SMEs to institute right corporate governance for their businesses.
Now, how is one encouraged to list one's company on the stock exchange?
Like Jumoke mentioned, the NSE is bringing up a lot of efforts to make sure that there are different board tiers in the market, so that even if you cannot list on the main board, you can find the SM to list, which has less restrictive requirements.
Now let's look at business sustainability and capital formation.
Okay. When you look at capital formation, generally people think about the national economy, but ideally you can look at it both from the corporate level and from the national economy. And what it really means is accretion of capital. In other words, when you start out, most entrepreneurs that start out with their savings and probably some family or friendly capital. They put in some money into the business. That really takes the business only so far. So how then do you ensure as a small business that you can then grow to the point where you're a Dangote, where you have a group of industries that are worth multi-billion dollars? Generally speaking, when you stand on one leg of a tripod, which is profitability, you find yourself struggling to break out of that limitation. But when you've got a well-rounded balance, I don't know whether you remember the stools we had growing up, which had 3 stands. Today, most stools have 4. Or maybe the local stove, where the woman puts in 3 stones. You find out that the pot sits a little better. When a business takes into account every aspect of its business, what you then find is that it naturally attracts clients, it has better brand equity, it's easier to project, better, or a good team is able to retain its team, as it were. And when you have all of these parameters in place, it's easier then for the business to then grow in profits, plow back the profits, and begin to have incremental growth.